getting the vocal cords a bit warmed up today. And really thank you all for showing up that early. And I will just stay on that slide, because thank you, Armin, wherever you are there, because I steal just a few keywords from you, especially engage and embrace, because, geez, that's way too big of a space. Because engaging and embracing is, I think, a big part of what Luca mentioned about innovation. And even though you also said that the world is changing fast, I might argue with the financial world, but the world indeed is changing fast, and especially when it comes to data, to modeling, and unfortunately to the risk we are facing as people, as a society, as well as an asset class. And usually I start these presentations, and probably a few of you have seen one of those already, with a few assumptions. One of that is that you're dealing with mortgages, and one of that is that you're dealing with risks, which I'm pretty sure that I don't need to assume that, because that's probably true for all of you. So what we're talking about today is a rather complex problem, and a problem that will kind of be part of our lives for the next, I don't know, until eternity. But trying to find kind of simple and workable solutions, because I know that in your everyday life and in your everyday processes, it's not easy to just kind of step on the brake fully and say, okay, we need to revert everything, we need to kind of reconsider everything, and there are hundreds or thousands of people that need to be onboarded to these kind of processes. So to kind of start off with a bit of a fear factor, but I'm pretty sure again that all of you know that, I'd like to show a few kind of examples of what I'm talking about. And these are not just kind of once in a 100-year events or once in a lifetime events, as they are likely called in the media. These are unfortunately yearly happening events, and I could probably pull out 30, 50, or even more for each country. So just have a few of the bigger ones that might have stuck to your brain, like the hurricanes and the wildfires, but also the floods. But as you will see in a few seconds, there's much more to things like climate risks, as well as things like biodiversity risk, because I know that we have a pretty straightforward regulatory framework when it comes to climate risks. We have the EU taxonomy, Annex A, for example, that lists directly 28 hazards that on paper and in theory needs to be checked for 3 different climate scenarios and 3 different time horizons. For biodiversity, it's a bit more squishy, I'd say. There it always says like, yeah, please consider biodiversity, please consider kind of environmental factors. But that these also have kind of major implications on complete portfolios is something that most people are just like not really considering, or just kind of going over it. And usually what I do is kind of look up a few kind of canceled building projects that are due to protected areas, due to endangered species, because these are the 2 main factors. But also things like drought or air quality can affect kind of the operation and the asset itself. And I did a 5-minute research, and especially for Spain, there are, I think I found at least 50 bigger building projects, from housing to hotels, and I think there was even one university that had to kind of be completely demolished because no one checked if they are interfering with protected areas or endangered species. So a lot of people usually tend to say, it's like, oh yeah, we know our places, we know where we build stuff. Turns out, sometimes you don't. So I don't want to just be all negative today. What I want to present to you is how you can use it, and what kind of opportunities comes out of this. Because this is not just something that you do usually in the once-a-year regulatory kind of circle, or that you do in the due diligence. I'd rather say this is something that you do over the whole kind of life cycle and every stage of an asset or a portfolio. And it doesn't really matter if it's a single site or a portfolio with hundreds of thousands of sites. There are opportunities to be kind of found in every stage. So if we're talking about the very first stage, due diligence, we just heard about the primary market and kind of getting to a deal, and this is at the very beginning of every kind of mortgage. There is the opportunity to either have kind of a first very basic red flag check to see if there's something that needs to be looked at. For most of the places and most of the assets, I can assure you it's not the case. But there is, I'd say, 15% of all assets out there that have or will have in the future some kind of issue, either on the biodiversity or on the climate side. So doing that during the due diligence, it's been a while since I've been in the university, so speaking is not that easy anymore. It can help optimizing your portfolio mix. It can help optimizing your insurance mix as well. And I know that many countries and many insurances start to kind of raise insurance coverage for areas where they deem more risk from a physical climate risk point of view. And then you can have a better overview from the get-go. If we're talking about optimization and management, so during the holding periods and apart from kind of the normal regulatory cycle, it helps optimizing. This holds more truth for kind of big housing companies or commercial real estate lenders, commercial real estate owners. But nonetheless, this is something that might need to be considered. And in the end, we all heard the lovely frames of EU taxonomy, SFDR articles, and you know the buzzwords way better than I do. But in the end, once a year, you have to go through this regulatory cycle, and there are things that come up more and more, and you need to show transparency. Not just that you care about and write your 20 to 200 page report about how the net zero kind of approaches of the company, of the banks, of the portfolio works, but also where you stand in kind of actual and future kind of risk projection. So if you now ask how that works, that's a very fair question. I can just show you how that works for Vida. So what we try to do in cooperation with banks, with the lovely colleagues from VDP Research in Germany, and a lot of infrastructure funds, as well as the World Bank, that uses our data now in over 56 countries for mortgages and for development purposes, is that we try to break it down to the simplest path possible, because it needs to be usable in kind of the everyday processes. And we came down to, kind of in the very basic version, to 3 different reports and a nice looking user interface if you want to use it. The 3 different reports, mainly one separates the biodiversity aspect, because I said that is a bit apart. One is about probably the behemoth in the room, the EU taxonomy, where it's about different scenario analytics and 28 different climate hazards. So that has a certain size and then has a certain kind of, hurdle to step into, to understand it, to make use of the data, and to understand the so what out of the data. So when is a data point indicating a risk? When is it indicating a change? And then there is the natural hazard analysis, so what we call the status quo analytics of potential damages. So if you are dealing with your portfolio, you probably, the first question a lot of people ask me is like, and what's the expected damage? So what's the dollar or the euro value out of that? So these are kind of the 3 things that we use as a stepping stone to help people get into it, to help understand and to use those data sets. Those data sets, just very brief overview. I assume the slides will be shared, and if anyone's interested, as Lucas said, we're all around. Get my laptop with me. If you want to try it out for your home address or something, just let me know. Most people actually try to use the address of their mom, which is really cute, and happy to do so. So if we are talking about biodiversity, as I said, it was a very kind of squishy topic, and it's not kind of regulatory framed as well. We have the big 3, so it's protected areas, what then there's called key biodiversity areas that are not necessarily protected by law, but kind of recognized. And endangered species. And there is a bunch more, things like deforestation, available water, droughts, and kind of contextualized things to understand, but it's really where it's if you have the bare minimum to do, it's the big three. It's like protected areas, endangered species, key biodiversity areas. And it's not about kind of legal, but also reputational consequences if you interfere and if you kind of put those areas to danger. The natural hazards, as I said, today's financial risks, so what's the kind of the real euro and dollar value behind that? As of today, you have what we call classic risks, and I think most of you have seen that chart. That's the EU taxonomy Annex A, where there is acute and chronic risks that really need to, and that's where the kind of interesting part and the tricky part starts, that need to be modeled for 3 different timelines and 3 different climate scenarios. And that's also where Armin's quote, I will pick that up again, the world changes fast. It's not enough to say, it's like, hey, we did that 5 years ago, so we have for 2030, 2050, 2080, we have done that now and we understand that. No, you can drop the ball on that. So the world is changing fast, our climate is changing fast, and therefore the kind of climate expectation and the damage expectations and how severe these changes are is changing on a, unfortunately, almost weekly basis. So it does make sense, and it is required to do that on a kind of continuous base. What I really want to urge you, and I don't care if you use Vida at the end or if you use any other tool provider or data provider, please, please, please make sure you understand that there's clarity in the methodologies. Because not just from a regulatory point of view, we had the first incidences where banks and customers came to us and says like, hey, we had issues with the auditors last year because we used different data and we couldn't explain how the methodologies work. And we know that this is not your kind of day-to-day business and this is very niche, but it is important to make sure that you can kind of follow the path backwards to why does Model X say there is a 2-meter flood and not a 3-meter flood in a once-in-a-100-year event. And also the regulators are trying to kind of get more and more into that. So please make sure there is somewhat of an understanding. That does not mean that if you use a kind of third-party provider like us, that there's no need for internal kind of capacity building, but see that more as a support function to that. So just touched upon that a bit. Why should you listen to me and not to someone else? It's tried and tested. As I said, the World Bank is using us in 56 countries now for different purposes, but always climate and biodiversity included. We have the lovely pleasure of working with the people from VDP Research in Germany, offering that data sets to over 2,000 evaluators that way through different kind of ways. And from Australia to the US, we have kind of tested our models, we have customers there, and we kind of gather continuous feedback on that. So, how to start, and trying again to keep things easy and trying to keep in time. I showed you the kind of 3 categories that you can go to, and that pretty much covers all the regulatory purposes. On the strategic side, sure, there can be done more, but just starting out, that's a good version. On the operational side, I can imagine that it needs to fit into your existing processes. So what we mostly do is integrate it via an API. So you just get the data, you just get the PDFs, and what most banks are doing if they are kind of going through use our data is they type in an address, or if they don't have an address, the coordinates. Then there is a kind of option to choose from different versions for different building types. I think right now we have some 15 different building types to kind of really reflect on if it's the garden shed or if it's the skyscraper, because there's a huge difference in that. And then the visualization. I was initially thinking about doing a visualization kind of show off here, but that would have kind of probably gone a bit over time. So if you're interested in that, we have something that looks a lot like Google Maps on steroids that helps you understand where you interfere, for example, with a flooding zone, where you interfere then with protected areas and the likes. And as I said, to be time conscious, if you have questions, because I know that's a niche topic, please feel free to reach out. Thank you.